one of the reasons why I, in my older years, and now I'm 33, almost 34, as I've gone through life, and God, I've gone through so much life the last 13 years, you wouldn't believe it. I've met so many people that talk big. And the thing that has always been a moment for me, like mathematics or in agriculture, those are fields where no matter how big someone talks, there is a burden of proof that is universal. In mathematics, it's the proof. You can claim to be a great mathematician, but you got to prove something. You got to do something, which is why I'm not a great mathematician, because I never proved anything big in mathematics. Now, doing the Hoskinson Center this upcoming month and rewrite the foundations of mathematics. It'll take 25 years to do it. And after I've done all of that, I'll pay back that debt of having the audacity to say that I'm a mathematician. But there's proof in that. And that's actually proving it to the harshest of all critics, the computer. Because computers can't accept, you know what I'm saying, or you get this, or without loss of generality. They can't get statements like that. You actually have to be very pedantic to them. So they're the harshest of all critics, far more than any referee of any journal. So it's going to be fun spending a big chunk of my adult life working in those circles, funding those circles, hopefully contributing when I have the time to those circles. And agriculture is the much same way. You know, it is all about planting seeds. It's all about watering. It's all about feeding. You can be a billionaire and have an incredible reputation and have changed the world. Do you think the cow standing outside understands that, has any conception of that? They're a passive moral agent. Life happens to them. They don't have the consciousness or capability to comprehend and make provisions. They just know they're hungry. And it doesn't matter if it's cold outside. It doesn't matter if the wind is blowing. It doesn't matter what the circumstances and facts are, if you just got divorced or you lost your sister or you're recovering from an addiction. None of that matters. At the end of the day, that cow's hungry. And if you don't feed them too many times, you'll see it on them, and eventually they die. They rely completely on you. And it's the same for the plants. It does not matter what's going on, where you're at, how that works. Either you water it or you don't. That's the key. And, you know, got plants right there on my desk. And no matter what's going on, I'm accountable to them. And I feel bad when they don't get watered. You know, and it's my job. It's no one else's job. That list, that ecosystem map that we see ahead of us, those have to be watered. They have to be tended. They have to be taken care of by people. And if they're not, they'll die. They won't get adoption. They won't launch. They won't get there. That's the ultimate truth. And that's why I really enjoy this stage of the project. You've given people a foundation, however imperfect, to realize their dreams. And the community, you're in charge of that. You get to see that. You get to decide what you support, what you don't support. It's not my place or purpose. It's yours. You get to decide what you vote to fund, what you don't vote to fund. You get to decide which stake pool you delegate to. Because there's actually the IDO, the initial delegation offering now. You know, these people are delegating to pools to support the development of some software. It's a novel distribution. It's a novel concept. And in the coming months, these things are going to be your choices. I think, 13 days, 14 days, HFC event happens. And there's a lot to do. A lot of things are going to take some time to turn on, but it'll go so quickly. And you're going to wake up to hundreds of applications and thousands of applications. The community is there. People are passionate. They're excited. But the hard days will come as the enthusiasm starts waning a little bit and we get into the reality of actual software life cycles and support deaths in version 2 and version 3 and version 4. That is what separates the people who have integrity from the people who don't. If we've built good foundations and a good ecosystem, then I believe you will all, as a community, collectively be better judges than most, and we'll have a lot less problems. There is no greater example of this than in the certification and verification ecosystem that's going to be built around Cardano. It's unique to Cardano in this respect. So Cardano has the capacity built within the languages to leverage years, if not decades, of formal methods, ideas, because of the functional programming nature. And we have a lot of partners like Cubic, runtime verification, and Twig, and others who are throwing their hat in the ring to provide services or infrastructure to allow a dApp developer to show proof to the community that their dApp follows a standard. Higher quality code, better assurance of semantical correctness, and potentially even better security. You, the community, have to demand that. You have to use dApps that follow that rigor and don't use the ones that don't. It falls upon your lap. Questions you ask and how you think. Now, we'll be here, always here, can't leave, got lobsters to feed. And I'll give, of course, my 2 cents from time to time. But of course, I can't endorse applications one way or the other. If I see something interesting, I'll of course talk to them. But it's not my place to pick winners and losers. It's yours collectively as a community. And it's not my place to say who's real and who's not real. It's for the builders of these things to show that they're real to you, the community. That is the reality we're working our way into over the next few months. And it's going to be fun to see. I think we've laid good soil, and I think you guys have good seeds. And as long as they're watered, I do believe we're going to have a great forest. Okay, let's get to your questions, huh? All right. Charles, do you believe that cryptocurrency could lead to a Ubuntu society and truly allow mankind to expand further into deep space? I believe so. I'd like to hear thoughts on the sci-fi future. That might be a carrot. Okay, Hal 9000XL, who's, I think that's the little girl from the Addams Family. This concept of societal evolution is a tremendously important component of what we do in the cryptocurrency space. People often ask what type of company is input-output. And I say we're not a cryptocurrency company, not even a blockchain company. These are tools in a toolbox. We're a systems company, the systems of the world, the voting system, the property system, the governance systems, the payment and settlement systems, all of these things that you take for granted, you're born into. When you are Swiss, there's a different set of rules about what it means to be Swiss than if you're born in Zambia or Argentina. All of those systems, they're going to be upgraded, changed. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to figure out, how do we build things that doesn't require a king or a leader or a CEO or a prime minister or a small group of special people. In the United States of America, it's 1 + 9 + 535. The vast majority of my life, the things that happen in my life, are controlled by a president, 9 Supreme Court justices, and 535 lawmakers. Huge impact, whether we're at war or not, war or peace, my property rights, my basic human rights, the tax rates, how land works, all these things controlled by that. And if not them, plus 50 governors and their associated state legislators. Less than 10,000 people in the United States have control over 300 million domestically. And because we have an empire, billions of people. There's got to be a better way than that. Honestly, it's not hard to corrupt 10,000 people. It's not hard to find 10,000 idiots and put them in positions of power. There's got to be a different way where we have a lot more control over our lives. What we do as a systems company is we ask that fundamental question. We try to build tools, techniques, economic systems, and pressures to push people in that particular direction. But at the end of the day, you can lead a horse to water, you can't make them drink. And so ultimately, people have to adopt the new way of doing things and have faith and confidence that social fiction is better than the ones that came before it. Will you integrate Solana at Charles Hoskinson? It's not my call. I mean, you guys are going to do it as much as me. Solana can do it. It's an open ecosystem. Now, it's probably in reference to my tweet. I noticed Solana has been getting a lot of adoption, and it's been getting a lot of buzz and talk, and it's certainly performing well in the markets. And whenever that occurs, I always take a step back and I say, okay, well, who are these guys? And I'm genuinely curious. We've gotten to the point where we really should sit down and read the protocol and see what's novel and interesting. So I commissioned this morning a business intelligence report to be written. I reached out to some people in the Solana community, and they were very helpful. They sent me over a Twitter private message, several links and places to look, and I'll read through it. And I'll probably have a stronger opinion and a lot more to say a little bit later down the road. I mean, I think everybody should have that mentality. Once certain thresholds are accomplished and milestones are accomplished, we should ask, who are you? Where you come from? What do you believe in? Where do you want to go? All of these basic things. And Solana's gotten to that particular point. Now, partnership at the input-output level, if there was such a thing, it would have to break down to either an area of economic collaboration or area of engineering collaboration or an area of scientific collaboration. And there are some cryptocurrency ecosystems we work with in more than one of those categories. So obviously we'd have to see what they do. They'd have to see what we do. And if there's something that seems to make sense, like we're both trying to solve the same problem, then of course we'd pursue something. But as it stands right now, there's no relationship. As it stands right now, it was just a genuine question. Tell me more. I'd like to learn more. And I hope they return the favor and they learn a lot more about Cardano, and the two communities can get to know each other. Nothing is accomplished by hate and division and maximalism. Everything is accomplished by trade and cooperation. Why is Ergo not in the top 10? A, because there's not enough in circulation, and B, it's not on enough exchanges yet. But in terms of technology and utility, I think Ergo is definitely an amazing ecosystem, got great people, and I really like what Alex has done. Regarding smart contract integration, are you still on track to do it September 12th? Yes, sir. When is the third cohort? Probably at the end of the conference. That'll be announced, because PAB will be solidified, and also the Prism Pioneer program is going to begin as well. Charles, I'd love to hear your elaborated arguments for dismantling the fair points mentioned in the crypto colonialism article in CoinDesk against Cardano. Thanks. There are no fair points in that article. It's a completely unfair, inhuman thing done by one of these social justice warriors that has very limited experience in jurisdiction. Crypto can't build roads. That's true. But people build roads, and people have to be paid and have the resources and expertise and knowledge and ability to build roads. Where do they get those things from? From systems. If you have bad systems, you don't get roads. You got good systems, you get them. What crypto does is it gives you a new system. And once it's installed, the system has properties about it which are better universally for each and every person in that economy. Doubt me? Ask yourself this. Would you like to live in a country with free and fair elections? Simple yes, no questions. Would you like to live in a country with sound, stable money? Would you like to live in a country where it's easy to get money in and out of the country? Would you like to live in a country where you're treated equally to everyone else, and there aren't people who have special considerations or favors because they won the genetic lottery or the geographic lottery, born to the right family, right name, right political connections? Yes or no? Would you like to live in a country where the property that you live on, you earned, and you think you own can't be stolen from you by a nepotistic, corrupt company or entity? Would you like to live in a country where the things you have a right to know are guaranteed and the accomplishments you make are recorded properly so you can prove them to other people? Yes or no? And we can go down the list. All of these things are contingent upon the operating system of that country and the belief that those things are credible. You don't believe me? Okay. You have two candidates. You're an HR director. One of them graduated from Massachusetts Institute of Technology. The other one graduated from a university in Kigali. They both have PhDs in computer science. Which one of them would you hire, knowing only that? All things being equal, let's say the curriculum's identical, you'd probably hire the MIT graduate. Why? Because you think it's a more reputable organization. Why? Because the brand and reputation and the faith in that institution is higher than the other. And that's the problem. So how do you get ahead if that's your only access to education? Now let's change it up a little bit. Let's say that the person who graduated at MIT was last in their class. The person who graduated at Kigali's is solvent. You still are judged by the brand and reputation of the institution. How does that person get ahead? Is it colonialism for saying that we can improve the systems? And how exactly would we do so? By coming in and changing them, or by creating a self-serve system? The point of cryptocurrencies is there's not central coordination or central permission keeping for the system to be integrated and installed. Don't believe me? Who did Bitcoin then? The camel herder in Mongolia who has his Bitcoin. Tell me, was there some committee that woke up and said, boy, we really need Batuza to buy Bitcoin. Those Gobi camel herders, they have to do it. Yep, we need a guy out there. It's a good story, good PR. Let's go find him, convince him. He made the decision himself. So let me get this straight, CoinDesk. It's colonialism to give people open source tools no one controls, to put the freedom of globalization and self-determination in their own hands and improve their systems so that they're on par with the rest of the world, if not better, and they can fairly compete with the rest of the world. That's colonialism. Just because that can't build roads, I don't think you understand anything if you view it that way. And unfortunately, you see a lot of this. This cynical 25, 30, 35-year-olds, they got their liberal arts degree and they think they know everything, and they've been all around the world how everything works. The evils of the world are all about dealing with scarcity at the end of the day, the fear of it or the reality of it. And the whole field of economics is the study of human behavior under scarcity. If resources are unlimited, no one really cares. Doesn't matter. But when resources are finite, who gets to decide how they get to decide? Who gets to allocate? Who has access? Who doesn't have access? These types of things. That's where governments come in. Corrupt governments are ones that keep the pie small. Good, well-constructed governments grow the pie for everybody, and everybody prospers from it. Systems make good governments, not the other way around. Bad governments make bad systems. Good systems make good governments. And I think that was totally lost, and that's totally beyond the point. And they say, oh, they have all these connectivity problems and infrastructure problems. Oh, fuck you. They're going to solve that too, themselves, because there's a lot of money in the developing world. There's a lot of value in the developing world. African entrepreneurs are going to solve the African connectivity issues. And in many cases, better, faster, and cheaper than we do. They're not going to have four monopolies beating each other up that are state-sponsored. No, there's going to be thousands of ISPs, thousands of different ways to connect. Oh, they don't have the right computing infrastructure. Africans will figure that out for Africans, not us. Okay? And they're going to do it better than we do. They'll get more, better, faster, cheaper. And that infrastructure alone is all that's required for new systems that are better than our systems. Give them access to the systems, they know what to do. They'll get it done. And when they do, collectively, the wealth will build to an extent that is comparable to ours. And then suddenly those roads get built. And they're not just roads, they're hyperloops. They're not just roads. They're hypersonic aircraft. They're not just roads. They're the Matternet. A lot of new things will come that we can't get here because we have blinders on and bad systems. How do we stop political corruption? Well, it's a combination of systems that enforce transparency and punish those who are corrupt. And it's also a reality that those who are corrupt tend to make money off of the system as it is. If the system is more prosperous, they make a lot more money in the new system. And even if they're already wealthy and powerful, look to the story of Jack Ma as a great warning of what happens when you don't live in a rule of law, free society. You can be the wealthiest man in your country who every day has a Rolodex filled with heads of state, regularly meeting with the most powerful people in the world. You pissed off one person, and because you pissed off that one person, now you're filling your calendar with golf, learning how to paint, and reading Taoist poetry, and staying out of the spotlight, and flying to Beijing to apologize for the indiscretions of the state, while the Communist Party slowly but surely tears your companies apart and hands them to their friends. And at some point, you end up gulagged when no one's looking. Political corruption is not a monolithic entity and a fact of life. It's a consequence of a system and a set of beliefs and an economic realities. Change the system, the beliefs, and the economic realities, the corruption changes and the corrupted actors change. And either they do or their own people will hang them. Charles, can you please tell us more about your biotech company you were setting up with your brother? All right, well, it's called Hoskinson Biotechnologies. And my brother and I are really interested in regenerative medicine and anti-aging. Also did it with my dad. My brother, dad, and I are all co-owners. My dad and brother are both doctors. They're internists. And my dad's been practicing medicine for well over 30 years. My brother's been practicing just for a few years. He graduated in Colorado and he moved up to Wyoming. And anyway, we're looking into treatments and we're looking into the science of anti-aging. So we're in silent mode, and what we're going to do is the same thing we did with IO Global. IO Global, what I did was hired the best and brightest scientists in the field, and we wrote 111 papers, and we kind of learned how this entire industry works. And then we built Cardano as an example product of these things. And now we're building out a digital transformation portfolio to go and change nation states and companies, build other infrastructure, products, and services. Okay, well, similarly, when you look at biotechnology, we're right at the edge of a renaissance in medicine and biology, where all these really geeky scientists, they've been sitting in labs for a long time, thick glasses, and they're studying a axolotl or a jellyfish that lives forever or a newt or a salamander. And they say, wow, they have this tremendous regenerative capacity. They get old, they form a cyst, they come out young again. They're biologically immortal. Wow, they have ways of regrowing limbs and healing wounds that would be mortal for humans, but somehow they survive these things. And we're not so much different, those creatures and us. So they've been studying these things for a long time and learning all the secrets of that stuff. And little by little, those secrets will slow drip their way into medicine. There's a lot of cynicism and skepticism in medicine. There's a lot of belief that innovation doesn't happen, and rightfully so, because the system is broken. There's plenty of brilliant biologists and brilliant doctors and brilliant scientists who really want to do a lot of good. They get very cynical because they spend a career and they realize first it takes 10 years, 20 years to bring a drug to market, $1 billion. And the innovation investments are seldom for revolutionary things. They're for treatments and evolutionary things. They're for slightly better, a new chemo drug, and it gives you an extra month. It doesn't actually cure the cancer. It just gives you an extra month, but it's on patent. We charge $50,000 for a treatment, or maybe, give you a slightly better treatment for your heart disease, your high blood pressure, blood sugar problems. Okay, so you just take that. Meanwhile, all these people are running around saying, gosh, we're learning so much so quickly. We really want to try some new things. So I think there's an opportunity to speed things up. I think there's an opportunity to innovate differently. And there's certainly a lot of great books written about it, from Aubrey de Grey to David Sinclair, Ben Bickman, Why We Get Sick, Lifespan, and so forth. And these books really lay out great blueprints of how to think about slowing down the aging process, or at least trying to play around with it. And there's already some great innovations, some new like exosome therapies and some old like the metformin, and some supplements like NAD plus that have actually been shown to have really interesting signals. Great researchers, Elysium does this up at MIT and dozens of others floating around. But we really live in a golden age. These biochips are being invented that you can test all kinds of things on. You have these amazing computer models that can simulate things that we never thought possible before. You can sequence the entire human genome. It used to be billions of dollars. Now it's hundreds of dollars. There's a company called Nebula that does that. There's actually a blockchain company they work with called Oasis Labs that actually makes you own the data and secure it, like 23andMe and these other guys. So it's a golden age that we're heading to, especially with AI-assisted research. And it's my belief that if we get in early, put a brain trust together, and we look at everything. We look at the orthodoxy, the metformins that have started to show real interesting clinical signals that are already FDA approved, to the unusual, almost pseudoscience, like photobiomodulation and pulsed electromagnetic stuff and so forth. So PEMF and photobiomodulation, hyperbaric treatments have been shown to do some really interesting things. There's an Israeli research group that's been studying that. So we'll look at all of these things and we'll have a really strong opinion, just like I do with cryptocurrencies, after we do the science, which means there's no substitute for meta-analysis and reading papers and writing papers and getting really qualified people together. And at some point, somewhere, somehow, we'll learn enough to be able to build a product. And I don't know what that product is going to be yet. All kinds of different things we could do. It'd be really cool, for example, to use autologous stem cells and do something there for wound treatment. Okay, but saying that is one thing. Actually doing it is a completely different thing, and turning it into an entire product is a completely different thing. It'd be really cool to go after antibiotic resistance, bacteriophages. That very act could actually teach you a lot about synthetic biology, because you have to type the phage to the bacteria, and that means you have to create some sort of machine that can do that stuff. Okay, but it's early days. So it'll be about 24, 36 months in silent mode, where I imagine we're not going to be announcing too much, but we'll certainly be hiring, just like Elon Musk did with his BCI venture Neuralink. And little by little, start slow dripping stuff out. And we're going to do as much as we can in Wyoming. So we'll create some local jobs there, get some people to relocate and live out those winters. And then just right out of the blue, come up to you guys and say, oh, by the way, we got this thing. Take a look. And it'll be a lot of fun. Yeah, this is a common one from Andrew Yang. He says, Charles, can I get your take on the progressive automation of our jobs through artificial intelligence and the implementation of some form of UBI, Universal Basic Income? So the paraphrasing the argument is that we're just about to head into the fourth industrial revolution. And this revolution is not an information, but it's an automation revolution, where you have two pieces of technology that are evolving at a very rapid pace. One are robotics. So instead of these wonky little robots that go danger, danger, Will Robinson, and clearly are toys, you now have robots that, you watch the General Dynamics videos or the Boston, all these, videos that are coming out of the military, and you see robots running obstacle courses and doing somersaults and lifting heavy things and so forth. And they're clearly able to understand how to navigate and interact with an ambient environment in ways that were just science fiction 10 years ago. So if you chart that rate of evolution and you look at the advancement of the brains of these things, GPT-3 and GPT-4, the people working on these things and how they're actually evolving at a massive pace, they're going to intersect at some point where you're going to have an agent that has the dexterity, agility, and strength and capabilities of a human, and the brain of, at the very least, a manual laborer. And what's going to happen is that plus some judgment, probably first with a human controlling a collection and eventually artificial judgment, means that that entity can now replace fast food workers, truckers, road workers, all kinds of people, or augment those people. So, for example, construction. You have your general contractor, and instead of having a carpenter, an electrician, foundation people, drywallers, floor people, tile people, you now have robots that occupy those particular roles, supervised by that general contractor. 15, 20 people build a home, one person build a home, plus an automated crew that never gets tired. If they get broken, they don't sue you, they don't get injured, and basically always does their best work. And software updates mean they make better and better and better work. And then when you want to know how to build new materials, new patterns, all of those things can be downloaded into them. Like, for example, you want to go from stick to ICF. Suddenly they just download the ICF program and now they know how to work with insulated concrete forms. Okay, ready to go. Even if the GC doesn't have any experience, the robots in the ground will. And then they also can do multi-purpose roles, like they can drive the trucks and they don't need a CDL necessarily. They can work at night because they have night vision. They can work in the rain or incredibly cold and windy conditions, and most workers can't work in those. They can work in hostile conditions, like highly radioactive environments, oxygen poor environments, dangerous environments, like environments that have a lot of natural gas floating around, like mines, things like that. Okay, so there's this push towards this reality. And the question is, when that happens, are we going to see an exacerbation of the things we saw in the last 35 years in particular, where the billionaire class gets richer and richer and richer and richer and richer and richer, but the poor and middle classes, they don't grow in wealth? Now, there's a big political economic divide in why that's been occurring the last 35 years. If you talk to an Austrian economist, you talk to a libertarian, you talk to a conservative, their answer is it's the fiscal and monetary policy that caused that reality. So those middle class and those poor people, they haven't gotten richer because the money in their pocket is losing value too quickly because of bad monetary policy. Since 71, we've been off the gold standard. You can actually plot from 1971 to today the value of the dollar, and you notice the buying power goes down. The wealthy get first access to the money and have all kinds of magic investments that are hedges against inflation. So the wealthy basically are in a position where no matter what the economic conditions are, they win. But the poor people only win when monetary policy is looking good. Okay, so you talk to the liberal economist and they say, well, no. The problem we have here is we don't have redistributionist tax policy, and the rich who have been getting richer and richer and richer, they should have a large chunk of their newfound wealth redistributed to society so no one gets left behind. And that is where UBI basically lives. It's nestled in that redistribution concept. And the basic idea is that all this new wealth that automation and AI is going to create for a small group of billionaires, we should take a meaningful percentage of it and then give it to all the people who will be displaced. The question is, will they really be displaced? We don't know. We actually don't have an answer. So far, the other three industrial revolutions that we've had, they actually were not displaced. Many new jobs were created. For example, we have new industries like professional gamer, VR, AR stuff. We have NFTs, we have gig economy, we have a lot of creative outputs, all these types of things where those people have been displaced. Maybe they go and do other things. There's plenty of people make money selling World of Warcraft gold. Maybe that's large enough to handle that displaced economy, assuming that people can self-retrain where the resources are available for that. Maybe they can't. There were people who were left behind in the last few industrial revolutions. And so far, the state was able to take care of them. Maybe they will, maybe they won't here. It's an interesting question. So where I believe UBI makes sense is not redistribution. Where I believe UBI makes sense is sovereign wealth fund. And A government invests billions of dollars every year into innovation and all these other things for the good of its people, and the education for the good of its people. A government shouldn't be spending more than it makes unless of time of crisis. I don't like deficit economies. And a government with its surpluses should be investing that money and getting a return on that money, like Norway did with the Sovereign Wealth Fund, which is now $1.4 trillion. Then it's not UBI. It's what Andrew tried to do, a freedom dividend. It's a dividend that you pay out from the Sovereign Wealth Fund to the people. That makes sense to me. And I like ideas like that because it's not redistribution. It's not taking property from one person and giving it to another person because you've arbitrarily decided, well, this person has too much. Well, I think the U.S. military has too much, $750 billion a year. And by the way, they just gave $85 billion worth of military hardware to the Taliban. I'm not so happy about that. Can we please redistribute some of that budget and give it to, oh no, we can't do that. But go take some of mine because you obviously will do better with it. Like go fight endless wars, go have a spy state, go take all my liberties and freedoms away and so forth. Do a really poor job of fighting a pandemic. Yeah, you guys know what you're doing. I'm spending up my money. Redistribution to me is, I'm a bit cynical about it because I see in practice how the money is spent and it's never enough. Once you get comfortable with this idea that you're entitled to $1,000 a month, why shouldn't you be $1,200? Why shouldn't you be $1,500? Why, the arguments are all the same in that respect. Now, the only practical way of doing UBI is with cryptocurrencies because you need digital money, you need digital wallets, you need the ability to push value to every single registered account. What we saw with the bailouts and the stimulus checks with COVID in the United States, how difficult it was just to distribute money to people in the legacy way. So UBI is definitely interconnected to CBDCs. It's definitely interconnected to digital wallets and digital ID and so forth. And our industry this is not the last we're going to hear of it. Charles, what's the most unique thing about Cardano that no one will have or has? At the moment, it's the hard fork combinator. That's a very unique, bespoke piece of technology, and it gives us the ability to do upgrades easily in the system. And every chain that's lacking it, they're suffering right now. We're doing good. Question from Fada. How to use DB Sync with a database different from PostgreSQL like MongoDB? There's an impedance mismatch when you go to a NoSQL system, but it's open infrastructure. And what will likely happen next year as the things change up is that open infrastructure will become more diverse, and it'll be entirely possible that it's going to live in a NoSQL world. I like MongoDB. I think it's great to store things as JSON. I love JavaScript as a language. It's one of my dirty secrets. So it'd be really cool to see that work with DB Sync. But Postgres is an enterprise-grade database, and SQL is the standard in the industry, and those schemas make a lot of sense to us. And so it seemed like a very good target. But it would be nice to get some diversity, not just with Mongo, but also graph databases like Neo4j and other NoSQL databases like Redis and so forth. Awesome. Charles, what are your thoughts on Shinichi Mochizuki, purported proof of the ABC conjecture? There's certainly a war between fields medalists about that. It's an old number theory conjecture from, I think, the 1970s, 1980s. What it is not important. What's important about it is the fact that it's too hard to verify. It's actually one of the reasons why we're setting up the Hoskinson Center over at Carnegie Mellon. The reality is that you have these overly abstract, very technical proofs that come out, and it takes enormous amounts of brain power for people to actually verify them. And there's literally no incentive in the mathematical community for the verification of some of this work. So think of it this way. You're a young, recently graduated PhD in mathematics. Now, the way math works is that if you're in your 20s and early 30s, you're super productive. Then you have a radical decline your productivity as you get into your 40s and 50s, and eventually you get to your 60s. You're not solving big things. So you have a finite career and a clock ticking mercilessly that if you don't do things in that finite career, you can't get tenure. You can't get into a good university for teaching. So if you're a graduate student, a postdoc, or a young professor, you look at something as daunting as the ABC conjecture, it's a Fields Medal class problem. So to get there and solve that without the luxury of tenure, you're probably not going to make much progress on it. Just like Fermat's last theorem, for example, it was one of those problems you don't work on. It's bad for your career. Or the Hailstone conjecture sequences, like the Syracuse problem, Collat's conjecture. These types of things, they're too hard. Okay, so that group of people on their own devices aren't going to take the time to open up 250, 300 pages of mathematical prose, read super technical proofs. In many cases are ahead of their time. What Sunichi did is he didn't just prove something in his mind. He actually created new math, new tools, new things to actually prove it. Okay, so it's not a simple thing. And literally, you're going to have to spend 6 months to a year of extremely focused, deep work to get yourself to a point where you can have a strong opinion, unless you just so happen to be in that field, just so happen to be familiar with that research group. Now, Sunichi didn't make it easy for anybody. Normally, when you have the audacity to report that you've solved a big problem, like the ABC conjecture or the Artin's conjecture or any of these things that are floating around the number theory world, you would go lecture, you'd go on tour, you'd spend some time with people. Like after Fermat's last theorem was proven, Silverman had a lot to say about it. Got together, Brown, they had working groups formed, graduate students came in, they had seminars, and the first thing they did is they simplified the proof. Went from hundreds of pages to like 30 to 50 pages. And he said, okay, I can understand it now. Okay. That's never been done. He just stayed in Kyoto and he published in his own journal for this thing. And he said, I have solved it. Job is done. It's the mathematical community's job to figure out what I've done. Okay. That's not good form in the mathematical community. And it's something that mathematicians don't look so kindly on. And that's one of the reasons why the other group of mathematician, the professor who has tenure and access to graduate students and postdocs and can kind of guide them, hasn't spent the time to really dig seriously into the ABC conjecture. And as a consequence, that means it just sits in paper, and there's a few guys in Germany that are certainly, who are very credible, who are spending some time claiming that perhaps the proof isn't right. And there's a few other adherents in Kyoto who say, and it's a big debate. Most professional mathematicians have no opinion on it. Kind of like the continuum hypothesis. It's beyond us in that respect. Beyond the industry in that respect. It's like, go worry about that stuff with the rest of the guys. Okay, so the point of constructive mathematics, the point of systems like Lean or dependently typed languages, is Sunichi can self-serve a big chunk of the verification of the proof. We see this with the four-color theorem. We see this with other things that have been mechanized. The difference is the tools here are on steroids. They're much better than the older tools like AutoMath and Mizar and things that came with the QED manifesto. It is my belief that if these tools are heavily invested in, which is why I put $20 million into this center, it was not a small investment. It's a permanent endowment that I'll continue adding money to throughout my life and career. It's my belief that over the arc, as people learn to use these tools, they become collaborative community tools, that what Sunichi's successors can do is they're not going to just dump a 250-page tome on the mathematical community and say, good luck, everybody. Have fun, everybody. Goodbye, everybody. What they'll do is they'll decompose it into interesting things, improve a lot of those technical, very refined things with these proof assistants. And if it compiles, there's a high probability that it's right. Then, because you've had the discipline to construct it in a way that's machine understandable, and a computer is the harshest of all critics because it can't take things for granted. You can't assume it knows something. I mean, you have to go all the way back to piano arithmetic and teach it what a natural number is. It's not simple stuff for a computer. You have to really work at it. What you can do then is you can show that certain things that would be of concern for a proof are resolved. Okay? And as a consequence, then you can really lecture on and talk about how all these pieces fit together, how the agenda fits together. Andrew Wiles was very considerate in this respect. if you actually look at the anatomy of Fermat's last theorem, his proof for it, with residues, what he did is he actually had these modules. They kind of plugged together in a kind of an overall giant proof agenda. And because each of those modules had kind of nice connections between them, it was easy to decompose the proof into understandable blocks that domain experts in those blocks could look at and dissect and say, well, now there's a problem here. In fact, the proof in 1994, the original proof, had a flaw. It was only discovered because of the care and consideration that was in the design of that proof. That was not done in the proof of ABC conjecture. Like, new math was invented at the same time as the application of extremely specialized tools, and a very incomprehensible paper was constructed. And if you use something like Lean, you're forced to do that in the process of writing a proof. So you have self-serving, you have a platform for collaboration, you have a higher burden of proof than most mathematicians are used for, and you have a separation of concerns, just like you would in any software architecture. And so the key is just to get to the tools to a level of maturity that they can be applied properly for the writing of mathematical proofs. And it's a collective game. And every day, mathematicians around the world, from Imperial to Max Planck and now here at CMU and other places, they work together and they think about these things, and they have all kinds of interesting debates. And the other thing is that you can switch your logics. So you can say things like, yeah, I don't like CFC set theory. Let's go do something else. Let's live in a system where the continuum hypothesis is false, like the system that Wooten constructed in these types of things. And let's get rid of the axiom of choice. Let's see what happens. That's really cool that you can just pull things out and switch your logics and so forth. Say it's true under this set, but it's not under this set. You do that as a set theorist or a logician. You don't commonly do that as an algebraist or a topologist. You don't get to the basement. You look at the basement dwellers and you say, live in the basement. They're like the radiologists of mathematics. They live in dark rooms. No, I'll accept that. So anyway, those are my thoughts. I think it's a lack of consideration, and I think it's the output of an insanely brilliant person. Let me be very clear. Shinichi's probably in the top 10 in terms of the most brilliant mathematicians alive right now. I'd say number one is Terry Tao, and Shinichi's certainly in the top 10. And I think he's gotten to a point where he knows who he is, and he has a high degree of confidence in his brilliance. So he just doesn't really care to go and take the time that somebody in their 20s would do if they solve something really huge. And it's going to be really fun seeing what people do from that. It's the other thing that sometimes is missed is if you look at like the Fermat's last theorem, for example, because this is one of those problems people have really talked about. So it's a great example. It's a gift that keeps on giving. There was a brilliant woman named Sophie Germain who attempted to prove it in the 19th century, and ultimately her agenda failed. However, Sophie's work actually inspired a lot of people to do a lot of other things in mathematics in the 19th and 20th century. And so sometimes the failure in attempting to prove something is actually a great opener to other conjectures and other ideas. Riemann spent quite a bit of time thinking about things like the Goldbach conjecture and prime number theorem and these things, and then we have the Riemann hypothesis. So there's a lot of magic there that happens, and mathematicians often remember their failures more than their successes, and their failed proofs and their failed attempts, their failed thoughts, at least unlocked something somewhere. If we can get that thinking, that computing that right now lives in the wet brain, the meat space, that dies with the mathematician, in part or whole, into a computing system, a digital mind. We can extract that and put that into that system. Then when a mathematician dies, we don't quite lose them. Instead, a crude simulacrum of that mathematician, a shadow of that mathematician, remains behind. We haven't lost Grothendieck. We haven't lost Hilbert. We haven't lost Emmy Noether. They're still there. Their papers are there. Their proofs are there. But the way they think is lost. Because the papers can't tell you enough. When you start using AI with Lean, mathematicians interact with artificial intelligence. They talk to it. It learns from them. They conjecture together. They work together. Part of who they are gets permanently imprinted in that system. And over 100 years of that usage, you'll have a gallery of specters of the great people from the past. and they're on display for all the new mathematicians. And that's the only way a field can get to the next level. The other fields, they have the advantages of tangible physical things. The ghosts of the past leave behind physical things they constructed, airplanes and trains and computers and all these things, outputs of the brilliance that you then can be inspired and build on. So you don't need to remember the names. Like, how many of you remember who created the cathode ray tube for the television? We don't even use that type of TV anymore. It was Professor Farnsworth. You might remember Futurama, Professor Farnsworth from Futurama, that he was actually named after Philo Farnsworth. But you don't even remember Farnsworth. And by the way, he created that because he was interested in fusion. And he failed fusion, but created the television instead with the CRT. But you see that. It's there. And the successors of that technology is what you're looking at on your screen right now. We don't have that in mathematics. We don't. We just have the papers and the proofs. And we're only one generation away from all of that being lost. Everything. The paper can be there, but it'll be like a dead tongue, a dead language, if no one bothers to teach it. That's the other important thing. One of the reasons mechanization of math is so powerful and so interesting above all the other things is that idea that we now get to leave something behind that's kind of like the cathode ray tube in structure and the other things. So to me, it is one of the most exciting and vibrant and sexy things any human can be involved in. And I hope that the center can figure out a way to grow to that and inspire many young mathematicians to use Lean as a tool. It is one of the friendliest, nicest, most amazing communities if you're interested. And actually, Jeremy Avogad, the director of the center, is writing a textbook called Lean for Mathematicians, which will be released under Creative Commons license. That's the other point. Every output of this is open source. There's no intellectual property, no patents, no IP, none of that stuff. Math should be for everybody. There's no notion of credentialing a mathematician, any more so than credentialing Euclid or Archimedes or Diophantus. It's a structured way of thinking, like critical thinking. It's a way of looking at the world and reality. That's not owned by academia. It's been preserved because no one else wanted to. We couldn't find a way to work it into society like we have poetry and fiction and all these other things that we have and we take for granted. But hopefully we can find a way to liberate it a little bit and open it up a little bit. Springer Vale won't have monopolies. That's at least the vision. And it'll be really fun seeing where it goes. And more books will come after Lean for Mathematicians. There'll be Lean for Algebraists. It's kind of like topology for turtles, Lean for topologists, Lean for combinatorists, Lean for probability theorists, and so forth. We'll just keep adding and adding and adding. And hopefully the center will one day be able to get most mainstream mathematicians thinking this way. And if they interact with that plus AI, they're permanently part of the year of math. Good question right here. How did you meet Ben Gertzel? What are your opinions on Grace and Sophia? Thanks, Charles. Big fan of you, Ben, and Alex Cherpinoy. So I met Ben through, I think it was Mihaela. It was Dr. M. She introduced Ben to Tom Flynn, our commercial director, and Tom talked to him. And then I had a chance to meet him. And I met him in person in Wyoming. He came to Laramie. And we spent some time together and talked to each other and had the hat on. And we drank some beer and went to Chili's, ate some chips, and had an incredibly deep conversation. I think we spoke for about 6 hours straight. It was like a Lex Friedman level conversation. And I interviewed him and we broadcasted that. And what I left from Ben was really a sense of what a true academic is like. A person who has no ego, who's extremely humble, who's just surrounded by this perma-curiosity. Everything is interesting. It wants to know how everything works. How does everything fit together? You could pour a puzzle in front of him, he'd get lost in it for an hour or two because he has to solve it, has to see it. And also someone who always is inspired by the science fiction of the future, the world we could live in, the things we could have. If only we humans could get out of our own way and we could find better ways of doing things. Now, I contribute in that respect with systems and what we do with Cardano, blockchain technology, and my company, Input Output. He contributes by trying to build an artificial intelligence that's real, an AGI, not a narrow AI that can do AlphaGo, or it has slightly better computer vision than the last computer vision, or you got good speech to text. Okay, it actually recognizes my weird accent. Okay, no, an AGI where you can just throw a problem at it, say, okay, AGI, go tell me the cure for this disease. You got it, boss. Comes back with all this thought and says, have you tried that? It's making contributions as if it's here. Okay. He wants to build that. And when you look at Grace and Sophia, the other Hansen products, his partner, really, these are just cases to carry that journey that he's been on. 300 plus papers. He got his PhD in math at 21. He's a super bright guy in that respect. And he's attracted around his orbit people who are equally brilliant or trained people. And those are just cases to hold those ideas and those things. Now, they happen to be very valuable cases if they happen to solve real problems. In the case of Grace, this is an area that is near and dear to my heart because two of my grandparents, actually all three of my grandparents died recently, last 36 months. I lost my two grandmothers and a grandfather, my dad's mother and father, and I lost my mom's mother. They all died of neurodegenerative disorders. On my dad's side, my grandfather had Parkinson's, my grandmother had dementia, and on my mom's side, my grandmother died of Alzheimer's from my grandfather on my dad's side. So I remembered them in their prime. I remembered them, when they were doing brilliant things and talking brilliant thoughts, and I watched them decline and decay, and it was a slow, horrible process, really dehumanizing. Grace is all about interacting with people who are in that state of affairs. They still have, from time to time, lucid thoughts. They still have, from time to time, things that are remnants of who they were when they were like us. And the problem is the conditions, the disorders are so caustic and corrosive to all of those around these people that people stop paying attention and they lose those lucid moments. Any single person who cares for people who have memory problems or neurodegenerative problems or have a family member that's this way, they can tell you they felt it. It's horrible. And it takes the patience of a saint to be able to see through all of that and try to connect to those last vestiges of lucid moments. Grace has unlimited patience. That's the nature of the game. Grace has no ego. Grace has all the time in the world. Grace can sit and listen to the wildest confabulation, the wildest, craziest ideas. And Grace will somehow be able to sort all of that out and find something hidden gem within all of it that's there. Grace also can hear things that humans can't hear. Like, for example, when your Parkinson's is getting worse, very subtle changes to your vocal cords occur. Subtle changes to your eyesight occur. You have this dementia stare. Every care provider who deals with those who are neurodegenerative, they notice that stare, that glazed over, vacant look that people develop. Grace can see that, internalize that, measure the state, take the vitals every time. It can sit by the bedside of these people 8 hours, 12 hours, 16 hours. It's just a limitation of how many Graces you have. And it can watch all these things. And what Grace can do is sort the fact from fiction and put those last lucid moments together and give those last lucid moments to the family in a way that is appropriate. That alone is, I think, worth the entire endeavor. We solve nothing else with Ben's work. That one thing I would have given anything for my grandparents. I would have given anything for that. In my 20s and in my 30s, I have traveled so much. And unfortunately, because of that, I missed the last lucid years of my grandparents. I just hear about it from afar. And I didn't even get to go to most of the funerals, just my grandmother's funeral on my mom's side. The other two I missed. And that's sad. That's really sad. So I think that these are great accomplishments. I love people who dream big, try big, because even if they don't succeed, even if they don't get there, the attempt to get there, the attempt to succeed, that's what really matters. That's what you should be teaching your children if you're parents, if you're an educator and you're in a position of mentoring someone, sculpting someone, if you are someone in a position of authority over someone. Turn off the news media, turn off the cynicism. Stop paying attention to those who say you can't. Stop paying attention to those who say that's just not the way the world works. And start listening and working with and interacting with the people crazy enough to believe they actually can change something. Because you know what? If enough of us get together and believe that, it happens. It's just that simple. I believe in 10 years' time, there will be a grace for someone else's grandfather and grandmother that actually does that job. And I believe in 10 years' time, as robotics gets more advanced, that grace is going to do a whole lot of things. And I guarantee a lot of burnt out nurses out there that really could use that because they're goddamn tired and they work too hard already. And they make a lot of mistakes because they're so tired and worn down, and they deal with the same stuff and bureaucracy again and again and again. And in many cases, they're treated like robots themselves. Before my brother was a doctor, he was a nurse, and he dealt with the brunt of all of it. That's why the nurses like him, because he's one of the doctors that actually was one of them and knows that has some kinship there. And having a grace around is a lifesaver. It stops you from making mistakes. It helps you do your job better, and it gives a lot more grace and dignity to the treatment of those who need help for all of us. This is great. Twitter never lets us down. Nothing you are talking about is important today. Well, codename wise, here's what's important today. The people around you. For you. That's the only thing that's important today. Not this. And sure as hell, not anything else. You want to get rich? Why? Because it's something around you today that you don't like and you think money's going to solve that for you. Think about it. Greetings, Charles. Cardano's fees might be too high if ADA's price keeps rising. Have you considered changing them before Voltaire? The community will be in charge of that. That's one of the handovers to get Voltaire done. You guys are going to have to decide reasonable and prudent fee structures for the future. Fees are not the best mechanism for congestion control, and there's certainly going to be alternative transaction vehicles like Hydra to mitigate these things. They're just to moderate a scarce resource, and that is a difficult economic question. Now, what you guys can do in the meantime is you can go and hire the rent is too damn high guy through Voltaire and make him the official spokesman of the Cardano fees. Why not? That's the magic of Voltaire. That's the magic of Catalyst. Somebody do a proposal. Find that guy. See how much he works for. I'm sure he'll do it. Think about it. Fees are too damn high. Klaus's notorious statement, "You'll own nothing and you'll be happy." Any thoughts on Davos's vision for our future? It's a dystopian vision if I've ever heard one. We don't have a resource problem. We have a systems and technology problem. There are asteroids in the asteroid belt that have more iron than has ever been found on Earth sitting there, or gold or other materials. We have the capacity as a species to harness geothermal energy, enough of it to power all of society for millennia. We can live in the sea in seastead. We can live underground. We can go vertical. We can do all kinds of things if desired. We can become a multiplanetary species. There's a group of people in Davos, this elite circle, who think they speak for the world, and they have this thing called the Great Reset, and they believe capitalism has failed. And we now need to replace it with some version of democratic socialism, which effectively means property rights have to be thrown away. It effectively means because of global existential problems like global warming, we cannot as individuals be trusted with liberty and freedom. Our betters, the royals, the dictators, the presidents, the political systems, the political class, they have to solve our problems. This is neo-communism. That's what it is. It's all rolled up. They change the vocabulary. They change all these other things. And they promise a utopia, but not a single damn one of them can take a step back and clearly articulate and explain to me how they overcame the problem that the minute that you install a government so powerful that it's in control of all the property rights, that government won't become co-opted, corrupt, and totalitarian. This has never not happened every time they've tried it. Now, we have systems with cryptocurrencies that don't have leaders. Cardano can up-to-date itself without leadership. That is a good indication you can do that for governments and companies. Great. In the next 10, 20 years, we're going to take those things for a spin. And if they work, we should push for nation states to go down that road because you can preserve and protect liberty and freedom and property rights, but you can encode in the system parameterizations that respect environmentalism, parameterizations that respect long-term thinking. Here's a great thought experiment if you don't believe me. Capitalism can solve all your problems. Here's how. You create another currency. That's all you got to do. Okay, so you got today money, the US dollar, rawr, go to work, make $10 an hour, $20 an hour, $30 an hour, $40 an hour, pick your number, $400 an hour, you're a great lawyer, $1,000 an hour, you're a partner, rah, all right, you're making the money, okay? You are short-term focused. Get as much of this currency as possible, any means necessary. Let's say your wealth is now two currencies. Today money, future money. Future money you can only earn by doing something good for future you. You who lives in the year 2200. Today money you earn the same way you earn it today. You need both to buy shit. Suddenly, capitalism's working differently. Utility and value of you recycling, planting a tree, taking care of people, volunteering, educating your neighbor, building a system that is preservable for hundreds of years is equivalent, in some cases, more valuable than the short-term stuff. That is the key. That's what is missed in this whole Davos, you'll own nothing and be happy, Great Reset. They're thinking too narrowly. What they have to do to win the game is change the game. They have to change the way economics work. You have to create new currencies. For example, global warming. Right now, if I was to go to Ever and try to build a geothermal power plant, it's like $40 million to build a 3.5 megawatt plant. It's too expensive on the CapEx, even though it lasts 100 years. And the operational expense is like $300,000 per year. It's so cheap to run those damn things, but it's too expensive to build today. But what if instead of just selling power, it also produces some sort of carbon credit that I can sell? And you sum the two together, and now I make more money than the coal guys and all the other guys. It's the most profitable power plant around. Having a second currency means that is the most profitable infrastructure to build, and everybody's in a rush to build it, and it displaces all the bad power. It's just that simple. Capitalism is an optimization engine. However you parameterized it, it is going to optimize and look for those local and absolute maximum minima and optimize accordingly. Minimize cost, maximize return. So by parameterization, it tells you where you can minimize to. That's the point of regulation. And by parameterization, where you're maximizing. If you're maximizing future money and today money, then the only way that works, and the only way you can be rich in a system like that, is by doing a lot of good for people in the year 2200. People you'll never meet because you'll be dead. Change the game to win the game. Davos people don't do that. They like writing books and charging $100,000 for a seat at the table for companies. And they talk a lot about global warming, but can't land your private jet there because the airport is full. And you can't land a helicopter there. Every 15 minutes, a helicopter is landing because it's full. And now you can fly on a private jet if that's your whole shtick, but okay. And they tell us how we should live our lives. Well, they're most of them born into positions of wealth and privilege. They got Rockefeller or Rothschild or these other things in their last names, or they're part of those families, and they've never worked a real day in their lives. When they graduate from their private school, they get to go to a very prestigious university that's been around for hundreds of years that their family members attended, and they get their requisite degree, and then they get to go run with the family businesses. And then they think in their head, because they've always been rich and powerful, that they know the secrets to life. All they know are the secrets to life in a monarchy, secrets to life where they're in charge. And we Americans, we're a little different. We were born with the whole idea that we don't like kings and queens, royalty. We kind of fought a little bit of a revolutionary war over that thing. And we're pretty scrappy, and we didn't give in. We didn't give up. It's built into our DNA. We don't like control. We don't like these hierarchies that tell us how to think and what to do. You can't even get people in America to wear a damn mask. Okay. You could tell them aliens are invading. Half in America would say, so what? I don't care. Get off my land. That's just how we look at the world. So I think we're uniquely well positioned to think about things a little differently. And I hope that mentality and that thought process can be used to implement these new types of economic systems. And ultimately, I think that's the way of solving the problems, not this Davos dystopian neo-communism. But I'm a libertarian, so one man's communism is another man's democratic socialism. And if you're like those millionaires and billionaires, as Bernie Sanders would say, you're more than welcome to drink from that cup. It's a free country. At least the Royals aren't shooting missiles at people. Yeah, Howard, I think you need to read some books. Get outside a little bit. You might be surprised to learn how the world really works. Charles, what do you think of Paul Stamets? Did you meet him? I've never met Paul. I've always wanted to, and we keep missing each other. I go to these mushroom conferences and he misses it, or I can't go to one that he's at. I've met Bill Ewell and what's his name? Rockefeller kid who does a lot of mushroom stuff, and William and the rest of the gang. There's some real cool people in the mushroom community. I just haven't met Paul yet, and I really do. He's a hero of mine. I read his books. I got both of them, the blue cover and black cover. One of Gourmet Mushrooms in the Mushroom Bible. Charles, we know you like rock. Do you listen to any electronic music, Chicago house, Detroit techno? Yeah, I like synthwave and psychedelic trance rock and space rock and all those things. I mean, it just depends on the mood. If you're on a road trip, that's the way to go. 2:30 in the morning, driving around. Used to have a Ford Fusion. Take that thing all around, drive from Colorado to Virginia and back, go through West Virginia with all the fog on the roads at 3 o'clock in the morning. You either got Playboy Radio on XM. That used to be real popular. Howard Stern or that, or then you got your synthwave. That'll get you through. or your EDM. Now, rock, I do like rock, and this has actually been an area of criticism. Some of the books out there. As a little side note, I was homeschooled, so my mom taught me and I raised me. I didn't go to middle school or high school. I did the homeschool all the way through K through 12, and I graduated early because of that. I listened to all my mom's rock. She saw Pink Floyd in concert and all those other guys, and so I grew up listening to Journey and Boston and Motley Crue and ELO and all these guys. It was just second nature to me. I love Steve Miller for that reason, and CCR. And later in life, I had the privilege of meeting Steve Miller and CCR, and that was like the dream come true. I had a conference in Miami, and I could invite anybody I wanted. So I said, fuck, let's bring Steve Miller in. He made me pay for all the guitars. He flew 14 guitars, including all these old Gibsons that were very expensive to insure. And then we had CCR come, obviously. God, that was amazing to see, like right there in the front row, 5 feet away from them, listen to them play Fortunate Son. I have a very eclectic music taste. I also used to play the piano a long time ago, and so I know all the classical things like Chopin's etudes and the preludes and all of Beethoven's work, and Bach's work, Brahms's work, and Debussy and Maurice Ravel, Godowsky, and so forth. There's always a mood. Now that I'm doing game development, we got Crypto Bisons, and we're doing algorithmically generated music. I really am starting to look into like Raman Djawadi's work and Max Richter's work and so forth, because I'm thinking a lot about how do you do soundtracks for games. And that's some blend of composer and some blend of stochasticism. You have to put them together or else you have a stale soundtrack. And there's a lot of inspiration for this. Great music is also storytelling. That's where they connect to us. The plight of the worker or lost love or these types of things. And so video games are great because you have the story and then you're trying to say, well, how does the music add a dimension to that and amplify that and reflect the emotional reality that you go into? That's incredibly fun. And there's an art to that I don't fully understand, but we're so fortunate we live in a world where there are people who do, and you can hire them and interact with them. And when it works together, it's just magical. It really is. How far is this statement from the truth? America is the best country in the world. I don't believe America is the best country in the world. Can't run for office now. Oh no. I believe that the American people are the best people in the world because they come collectively from the entire world. We are one of the very few countries in the world where the American people are composed of every single country. I honestly don't believe there's one country missing. Even North Korea, there's North Koreans in America, there's Iranians in America, there's Israelis in America. There are flags from every nation in our culture. We're a country of immigrants, and that's what makes us great. That's what makes the country great. All the ideas, the languages, the cultures, the traditions come together, they blend together, and it's this great melting pot that finds a way to make it work. Now, our government was built for a different time. It was built for the 18th century. It was built for the 19th century. It was built for the 20th century. It wasn't built for instantaneous communication and a fourth branch of government, a grand bureaucracy and civil service with millions of people in it who are politically immune to consequences of their actions. Our government has let the world down and the American people down. We deserve better, and we try to vote our way out of it. We really do. But look at our democratic institutions. We only have 2 political parties we're allowed to vote for. No political diversity other than those 2. And our candidates, for the most part, are chosen for us by powerful people. And then we're told we're only allowed to vote for one or the other, and then somehow that's going to solve the problem. And every election, most important election of our lifetime, most important election, it's bullshit. That's why less and less people vote every year, because they're disenfranchised from the process. And we leave behind the greatness of all those people who are truly amazing. Their collective intelligence and capability and brilliance is recused from our system. So I believe very firmly the American people collectively as a whole, never bet against them. We will win 10 out of 10 times when we are properly unified. Want us to go to the moon, we'll make it happen. Want us to go to Mars, we'll make it happen. I don't believe the American government is the best government. I firmly believe it's ossified, corrupt, chaotic, and it needs to be upgraded. And it is the duty of the American people to do that. And what's going to happen is we're going to get so sick and tired and frustrated of the lies, nepotism, corruption, and frankly, bullshit that's being inflicted upon us. Children being taken away from their parents because their parents don't want to give an 11-year-old a vaccine. You can't do that forever. I'm telling you, it's gonna break. And when it does, we're going to rewrite the Constitution through a convention. And then suddenly we won't have this old, horrible, broken government that thinks it's okay to go fight in Afghanistan for 20 years and come back with nothing to show for it outside of lost blood and treasure and national disgrace. You'll have a government for the people, accountable to the people, harnessing the brilliance of the American people. And then people like America again. Because every day, actually everybody kind of likes the American people. Who are they, by the way? White guy sitting in Colorado? Or is it the taxi driver from Senegal who drives in New York City? Or is it Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft from India? Or is it a brilliant doctor from Namibia who started as a mercenary and she worked her way here? There are literally thousands of stories that are unique and amazing. Struggle all along. The North Korean gal who's just, I forget her name, who's just on the Joe Rogan podcast and also the Lex Friedman podcast. Interviewed her right before he interviewed me. And she tells this horrible story of having to claw and scratch her way from North Korea to China and eventually get here. Her story is our story. It's the American story. We carry it with us. And the unifying theme of all these things is this meritocratic idea of it can be better. Who can argue against that? There are certainly cynical philosophies like this woke cult of postmodernism and power hierarchies. And it says, oh, no one can be better. It's all an illusion and everything's about power. The point of the government is to get redistribution so that it's fair. The American dream was always that you can earn your way no matter where you start from. It might take several generations, but you'll get there. Your granddad may have started with just the clothes on his back as a refugee, and when he died, he had a house. And your dad may have actually been able to start a great company, and the son can actually end up taking that company, making a Fortune 500, or the daughter. That's the American dream. It's multi-generation in that respect, too. It's just this idea, generation after generation, effort after effort, meritocratic work. Roll up your sleeves. Do what you need to do. I'm a product of my father and my mom, and they're a product of their father and their mother. My grandfather on my mom's side, he right out of high school signed up for the Marine Corps. Marine demolitions, fought in the Korean War, and then came back home, rolled up his sleeves, became a lineman, worked his way all the way up, retired an executive. I think he had 19 patents before he retired, and he just had a high school education. And he was a product of the fact that his father left when I think he was 12 years old, 13 years old. My great-grandfather was a drunk on my mom's side. Didn't take care of his family and skipped out town. One of those leaving for cigarettes, never came back type of career. Grandfather didn't complain. Had to be the man of the house and had to find a way to survive the Great Depression and the Korean War and everything that came in between and get it done, raise 7 children. And only because he made those choices. And my grandmother made the choices she made, the sacrifices she made, that my mom had a chance to live the life she did, and I had the chance to live the life I did. That's America and the American people in a nutshell. We're given the freedom to fail, and that means we're given the freedom to succeed, and we're held accountable for our failures. It's okay to never be great. I've certainly made so many mistakes in my life. God, if I could get a do-over, I could write you all a 800-page book of the things I'd do differently, the meetings I'd do differently, the interactions I'd do differently, the thoughts I'd have differently. But you know what? Despite all of that, I found a way to succeed and get to the top. And you can too. At least each and every person has a quality of opportunity in that respect. So I firmly believe that we're the best country in the world because of that, because we welcome the challenge, we welcome the game, we welcome the integration and so forth. And we have a debt to the world to replace our government with a better one. And we will get it done one way or another, even if we have to drag them kicking and screaming through a constitutional convention. It'll happen one day in my lifetime, because it can't keep going downhill. But then again, I'm an American, so we're kind of programmed to think that way. From Costa, greetings from the most beautiful place in the world, Switzerland. We love you, Charles. I do love Switzerland as well, and I got to tell you, it is one of the prettiest places. Colorado looks a lot like Switzerland. You go out to Telluride or Uray or any of those places, and actually, they'll give the Alps a run for their money. But Switzerland is certainly a place that's near and dear to my heart. I used to go there every quarter. COVID came, so I haven't had a chance to go there, but I'll return. And I love the community out there, and it's home of the Cardano Foundation, based right in Zug. What's the greatest virtue? I think that's a good way to end it, huh? As I've gotten older, I think self-integrity is probably the greatest virtue. We live in a society, collectively in the developed world at the very least, where you are allowed to accumulate enormous amounts of self-fictions, small or large. And when people accumulate too many of them, you see these people like Jeremy DeWitt or others, and you say, wow, that guy's really fucked up. Well, the problem is that most of us are closer to that than we like to believe in small little instances, and they accumulate. And what these things do, these misintegrities, is they hold you back from getting to your greater self as a human being. And so the reason why psychedelics have become such a prominent area of study, if you read Michael Pollan's book, is not because they take you to some astral projection and you get to meet DMT aliens and go on crazy adventures or things like that. It has nothing to do with any of that. Psychedelics are not so useful to teenagers for the most part. They're club drugs when they're used there. But yet they're tremendously useful for people in their 50s and 60s or people who have post-traumatic distress disorder or depression or other conditions. Why? Because you have this default mode complex and you have these misintegrities, these self-fictions, these issues, these accumulations of stories. And then you go and take this substance, and what it does is it removes the sense of self. And you extract your consciousness from who you are, and you stand and observe yourself as others see you for the first time ever. There's ego destruction there. And then suddenly you say, holy shit. Oh no. No. That's no good. We got to make some changes. We got to do some house cleaning. Now, being a public figure, I get that for free for the most part. Every comment, tweet, Reddit post, 4chan post, there's a kernel, there's a little bit of truth. Not a lot, but there's something. And if you're really clever, you know how to filter these things in a way to improve yourself. If you're not so clever, you let it bother you, eat away at you, and really crush you. Jordan Peterson, for example, is a self-help guru, brilliant psychologist, goes on these long, circuitous stories. Maps and Meaning is one of the hardest books I've ever read in my life. After he got big, I said, oh, I'll take a look at it. And whoa, this is big. But then he ended up becoming a drug addict. Why? Because he wasn't able to get the benefit, but filter out the toxicity of notoriety, and publicity, and fame. So those things plus personal issues in his life combined together, and they created a state of affairs where he had to use substances to try to bridge the gap and deal with the pain. I could go on a diet. I could lose weight. I have been. I've actually been working out every day. Not all super hardcore, only twice a week for the hard stuff. And then I get on a treadmill. Already lost 5 pounds. I put that off for too long. I used the excuse of the fact that I'm successful and powerful to justify not taking care of my health. But all I'm doing is I'm hurting myself. There's no integrity in that lifestyle. And, where Chan says, look at this fat soy boy and these other things. I can get angry about it, or I can accept that there is a point that a person in my position with my responsibilities and obligations, that kind of a person needs to be better. I need to get up earlier. I need to get up at 5 a.m. I need to find the time to be healthy. I need to eat right. If anything, because I inspire others to do so. And a person in my position should do that every day. That's what leadership is all about. So that the integrity component, I think, is the single most important component in all the things you do, all the business dealings you do, all the interactions you do. Even if you don't have positive or good interactions, finding a way to dig through it and find at least something there that you can latch onto and say, we tried our best to have a good outcome. There you go. And then when you start thinking this way, you start losing a lot of negative things, a lot of vices, hate, for example, anger, vengeance, resentment, envy. Those vices they just fade away, they melt away. Like Ethereum, for example. I do have objectively legitimate grievances when you look at what's happened and what's been said and just the craziness behind some of the things that continues to be recycled again and again and again, and the noise and the garbage and so forth. And I could just spend the rest of my life angry about that. But at the end of the day, if you think about it, you say to yourself, well, their existence does a lot of good for the world. A lot of good research. They've decentralized a lot of things. There's a lot of beta testing that they're doing. And, every now and then there might be an area of collaboration that makes sense. Might be narrow, might be broad, might take 10 years, might take 15 years. Why hate those people? If they want to live in a weird world where they entertain fictions and they hate a person who doesn't exist, that's their disadvantage. I'm going to live in a world of integrity. I'm going to live in a world where we actually can see through the smoke and mirrors and we can actually see each other as human beings. Get to that point, and then suddenly you don't have a lot of problems anymore. And you can really focus in on the things that matter. You can really think long term. You can really think about where would you like to be in 10 years. People always overestimate what they can do in 1 year and underestimate what they can do in 10. Why? Because humans are really bad at exponential growth. And, if you get 1% per month, you don't really think it's too big, but actually it's huge over a period of 10 years, the returns that you can get there. You don't see it though in the short term. So having that virtue of self-awareness and self-integrity and being able to perceive yourself objectively, good, bad, and ugly, and be intellectually honest about who you are and what you can and can't do and how quickly you can move, and being able then to put yourself on a path, not where you do the great things. That's what we all aspire to do. But put yourself on a path where you do the simple things, the small things that are easy to do, but are also easy to not do. That is what makes greatness. If you look at any of these people that are great people that objectively have done great things or have been able to push themselves to the boundaries of human limits, all those people had that mindset. A little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit harder. And they didn't let the failures bother them, because it's only a problem if you're out of the game forever. If you can play tomorrow, get back into the game, try a little bit harder, push a little bit harder, then you're still there, you're still relevant, you're still breathing. You give up when you're dead. We've lost a little bit of that in society. Social media has constructed a world where We have become obsessed with the outcome, the end goal. It's hard. I mean, you want to learn how to play the piano. Go and start playing the piano. You feel like you're pretty good. Then you go to YouTube and you see some 7-year-old who's a concert pianist. You want to get in shape and lose some weight. You start losing a few pounds. You feel good. And you go to Instagram and you see the models. Anything you want to do, there is some outcome, some end goal that person is amazing, incredible. And if you live in a reference where that's what you want, you'll never get what you want, because what you're seeing is a snapshot of a deeper truth and story. And those people in their own way had to follow a path quite similar to the one that you happen to be doing yourself. And having the integrity to admit that, and saying it's okay, keep that as a North Star, but put in the work every little day is such a powerful thing. And there's a lot of tools that can help people get there. And psychedelics happen to be one for the old, but there's all kinds of tools like flow research and these types of things. Stephen Kotlin is a big researcher there. There's Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, dozens of these human performance psychologists that think about this mindset, but it all always stems from the same common source, which is the integrity to understand reality as it is, not as how you'd like it to be, the ability to admit that, and then work a little harder every single day. And once you're in that mindset, the vices melt away. Even if they don't, you have a mechanism upon which to conquer them. And having said that, it is now time to end the AMA. And those of you who are frequent guests of our AMA, you'll know how we do that. We do that on Kiva. So, .org. And by the way, when I go to Africa on the Africa tour, I'm going to be going to Kenya. It's one of the many nations. And there's a partner we have there that does microfinance. We're starting a $150,000 pilot with that partner, and we will be with that partner doing a microfinance blockchain pilot next year. So Kiva, as I mentioned, is just a proof of concept, a stepping stone to talk about microfinance, but I'm very excited to actually begin doing that right out of Daedalus, right out of your wallet. Okay, so let's go here. Let's look at Lend. And let's find a borrower. And given that we are going to Africa soon, let's go to Africa. And given that we're going to Kenya soon, and there's a lot of great microfinance in Kenya, let's pick somebody. All right. How about Mercy? All right, Mercy. She's looking for a loan of $650 to help a single mom to purchase farm inputs such as fertilizer and seeds to help improve her farm. So she's 32 years old. She's a rural smallholder farmer from the Sionjiro area of Kenya. Butchered that pronunciation, didn't I? Her family's main income source is milk from their dairy farm. However, they're also involved in other agricultural activities such as growing maize and beans. The biggest problem that farmers in this region face is the huge deficit in terms of access to agricultural inputs, meaning that the farmers' yields and incomes are far below what they could be. Kalimo has partnered with Kiva to provide financial services to smallholders around Kenya. Through these financial services, farmers from the region, like Mercy, can now buy productive assets and important agricultural inputs for use on their farms. Mercy is seeking a loan to buy the farm inputs such as seeds, fertilizer, herbicides, and pesticides. Your loan will enable her to improve her production through the use of quality farm inputs. This intervention will help her fill the increasing demand for food in the market and in the process generate more income to repay the loan debt, improve the quality of life for her family. She also hopes to improve the condition of her house. Please help this mother to accomplish all her dreams with just a loan. All right. Well, let's help her out. And let's give her the full amount. And now there's a problem adding. Oh, I got to sign in. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing. There we go. Okay, make sure that's there. Take off my glasses. What I need to do is sign in. Loading. Continue to check out. $5.50. There we go. Can't wait to do this with Cardano. It's going to be great, guys. Okay. Okay. Boom. All right. All right, let's share screen again. Looks good there. Share screen. So we had a bit of mercy for mercy. In my portfolio, let's take a look how it's doing. So far, almost 6,000 in loans. We have a FOF from Palestine, Albania, El Salvador, Senegal, Togo, Philippines, Haiti, Cambodia, Mexico, Peru, and Kenya. And now we have Mercy there. And you paid out her entire loan. So it's $550. I cannot wait to see you guys do this. I can't wait to see microfinance happen. It's a big passion of mine, and it's one of the reasons why I got involved in the space. Did a TEDx talk in Bermuda back in 2014. And that was one of the principal things I talked about, the 35 to 85% interest rates for microfinance. It's just amazing that we are literally this close to actually doing this now with a stable coin, a blockchain derived reputation metric, and peer-to-peer lending. This close. I'm going to go to Kenya here in October, and I'm going to see Possession and the rest of the guys, and we're going to design the whole thing, and first quarter, second quarter of next year, we'll get that done. That's a life's work. People often ask, like, what are the moments that define you and make you excited? And that's sure as hell one of them. It's what I've been looking forward to for almost a decade now. Okay. Well, this has been a lot of fun, everybody. Thank you so much. Until next time, I've enjoyed your questions. This one was a little bit more philosophical. And September 12th, we're going to have Gogan. Long time coming.
when I turn up the bass. They love it when I turn up the bass. They love it when I turn up the bass. They love it when I turn up the bass. right now.